We are going to be continuing our march through history. We're into the millennium. I think I got it now. There we go. We'd stopped for a couple weeks and went into Babylon, Mystery Babylon, and Babylon. We talked a lot about New York. We talked a lot about America. Well, that, of course, was mainly for the tribulation. Now we're into the millennium, and we'd started the millennium earlier. So if anybody, probably a good review if you're really trying to understand these things, 5 or 6 lessons ago, and they're on YouTube, they're on video, Millennium Part 1 and Part 2. The millennium begins, and so this would be really would be Part 3 to that, but we're going to talk about the millennium now. So this history we're in now is all future, okay? Because that's what's coming. Now, I want to talk specifically today about the millennium populations. Who lives on the Millennium Earth? You know, I think that's an interesting question, don't you? I don't think it's a topic widely discussed, but that's the way it goes. All right, just a real fast review. God relocates heaven's capital on the sides of the north. That's up in the third heaven right now, but it's coming to earth. And those previous videos go into that in detail. This real estate includes God's temple and throne. It sits on top of Mount Olivet, which is open to reveal Abraham's bosom, paradise, Eden. That's all the same place. And that's discussed in Isaiah 45:8 and Zechariah 14:4. Jesus returns to this earth. He touches down on Mount Olivet. The earth divides. The open Olivet just splits wide open. And then Isaiah talks about the earth opening them and something coming up from underneath. So the earth is going through staggering geographical changes when Jesus comes back. The name for the Millennium Earth is the regeneration. The earth is regenerating. So lots of things are happening. Lots of things are happening. Psalm 48, 1 through 3. A song and psalm for the sons of Korah. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness, beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. That's a familiar passage. We've used hymns with that in it. But Zion on the sides of the north, that's in the third heaven right now. How can it be beautiful for situation on the earth? Well, it's coming. It'll be here in the millennium. That great city, the temple and everything, comes down out of the third heaven and resides on this earth. That is not New Jerusalem. That's the city on the sides of the north, Zion. It comes down, and that's where the throne is, and that's where the temple is. And Jesus will rule not only this earth, but the universe from that temple and that throne for eternity. All right? So that's something we need to be aware of. I'm going to read a couple more. It's Micah 4, 1 and 2. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways. We will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth out of Zion, and the word from the Lord from Jerusalem. See, this is future. Isaiah 56, 7 and 8. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. The Lord God which gathereth the outcasts of Israel say, yea, yet will I gather others to him besides those who are gathered unto him. It's this glorious, wonderful opportunity for the whole world to be evangelized, so to speak. at the beginning of the millennium. There are Gentile nations that have gone into the millennium. But it really gets kind of fascinating that the Lord is opening up his doors to everybody. Israel is still the main player, so to speak. But we have to understand it. You notice that the passages we just read, there's animal sacrifice, and there's burnt offerings happening in the millennium. This is after we've come back. Okay? Now that's what bothers a lot of people. See, but animal sacrifice and burnt offerings were never for the Christian church. Okay? And they're never going to be. But they are going to be back in practice during the millennium for groups of people. That's why we have to understand the groups of people. If you've never thought about this before, I think you'll find it quite interesting. All right. Who lives on the Millennium Earth? Well, there's 144,000, remember those from the book of Revelation? 144,000 Israelites, Jews, 12,000 from each tribe. They're going to be there. All right? They're going to be on the Millennium Earth. There's mortals, saved Jews, survivors of the tribulation. Everybody doesn't die in the tribulation. So there'll be more. Just think about that. You could be alive. There's people alive right now. If we're in the last days, and I certainly believe we are, Daniel's 70th week is going to start pretty soon. I mean, there's going to be Antichrist is going to show up, and very soon. I mean, we might go to heaven from here, but your grandchildren aren't going to. Their life's about to really get upturned. So there's a lot of people alive right now that are going into the tribulation. A lot of lost people. Of course, if you're saved, you're a Christian right now, and you're not going through the tribulation. But when you get with these lost people right now, will go walk right into it. Just think about that. They'll walk right into it, and suddenly they'll find themselves in the tribulation. Some of those people are going to survive the tribulation. They're going to walk right into the millennium. Boy, you thought your last 10 years were eventful. Imagine going into the tribulation and then going into the millennium. And you're still only 45 years old. Okay? There's Jews. There's survivors of the tribulation. And all the Jews aren't back in Israel yet. They're around the world. Mortals, surviving Gentiles from the tribulation. Gentile nations whom God allows. Not all Gentile nations will even exist. Matthew 25, 31 through 34. They'll be resurrected, immortal Old Testament Jews. People like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David. All those people who are living in paradise that were taken up to the third heaven with Jesus, they'll be back, and they come back with Jesus, and they'll be in the Millennium Earth. Then there's Christians. There's you and me. The bride of Christ will return with Christ. And we will be immortal. And so you got this mix of people. You got regular people, saved Gentiles, lost Gentiles. There's people throughout the millennium, there's people getting married and given in marriage, and there's people having babies in a regular way. I'm not talking about the church. I'm not talking about Christians. But let's start to think of it. So there's all these populations. There's these groups of people living inside the millennium as God develops his kingdom. And he's giving everybody an opportunity to be part of the kingdom. The people who get saved in the millennium will be millennium saints. All right? They will eat from the tree of life and live forever. That's how they'll believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, but it's different. Christians don't have to eat from the tree of life. So these are some of the things that I want us to think about. All right. How many people survive the tribulation? You ever thought about that? You ever tried to do the math? Well, you don't have to, because I've tried for you. And it's not, I'm not the only one, but you can't figure it out exactly. But I think we can take a stab at it. All right? Revelation 6, 1 through 2. And when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard it as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, this would be John, behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow and a crown, and was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. This, of course, is right from Revelation 6. I got to say something about this guy on a white horse with a bow, and he's going forth to conquer and to conquer. A large part of Christendom says that's Jesus Christ. It's not Jesus Christ. That's the Antichrist. The first guy shows up who's not the Christ, even though he says he will. He conquers, and Satan always has a bow, too. Satan is exercise. Satan, when you put on the whole armor of God, you're supposed to resist and fight him to resist the arrows and the fiery darts of the wicked one, right? Satan throws things at you. He shoots you from far away. That's his style of, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but that's his style. Where a Christian's armor is, he's on full dressed armor, and we have a sword. A Christian's going to fight somebody, you got to do it face to face. Man, that's real warfare right there, face to face. I'd rather shoot somebody from 100 yards away. But anyway, I'm just pointing some differences out. That's the Antichrist. The reason he gets a lot of attention as being the Christ one of the reasons is because the Roman Catholic Church says that's Jesus Christ. But it's not Jesus Christ. It's the Antichrist. All right. And those four horsemen follow this guy. And they cause all kinds of trouble. Okay. There went out another horse that was red. No, let me see. He had a bow. All right, I'll give him the next one. A quarter of human life dies. All right, let's read this. If 8 billion people are living right now, population is reduced to 6 billion. Revelation 6:4. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. These are people following the Antichrist that are doing the damage. And I looked, behold, a pale horse, and the name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. A lot of people are dying. A fourth, there is 8 billion people on the earth. A quarter of them, and I'm anticipating tribulation is starting within a decade or two, and a quarter of those people will die. There's a hard, fast number they just give us. We've seen a lot of terrible wars, but nobody's seen that kind of carnage. Not yet. Okay, so fourth part of the beast. And they're even killed with hunger. So there's people who are starving to death. There's people, they're just killed with death. Maybe that's, some kind of virus. But with the beasts of the earth, the animals are killing people during the tribulation. Isn't that something you'd like to avoid? Doesn't say what kind of beasts of the earth are. I mean, there's a lot of big dogs. If they go bad, that could do some damage. Lions, tigers, all kinds of stuff. Okay. Revelation 9. 18 through 19. By these three was the third part of the earth killed. Now we got a third part of the earth of the men killed by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouth. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents, and heads, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. These are things that right from comes out of the earth. They're demonic beings. And if you just believe Revelation literally, it's more of a horror story than if you try to make it symbolism. These are devils, and they're killing people. By him, a third part of the earth is killed. The population reduced by a third. Thus, if we just start with 6 billion, after this it is now 4 billion, and the estimates of persons surviving tribulation, now this is a guess, I think 2 to 3 billion people are still alive. That accounts for all kinds of numbers that aren't given, but it tells you that people are dying in droves. So 2 to 3 billion people are still alive when Jesus Christ returns. Those are the people going to walk right into the millennium. Some will be saved. Some will have survived, have not taken the mark of the beast, and they have survived, and they've hid out. They haven't been caught up with the Antichrist police force. A lot of Jews. All Jews are saved, though. All Jews will be saved, but all Jews are not back in Israel yet. So they're scattered around the world still. Probably some in America. America's pretty much finished. New York has been obliterated. And America's been, remember, we've covered this before, but it's basically like what's left of Sodom and Gomorrah. So in America, there's not much left of America. So this whole earth is ravaged. This whole earth is basically destroyed. That's why it starts to regenerate right away, though. So you've gotten far less people on the earth than right now. Maybe, 2 billion. I don't know. That's still a lot of people, though, isn't it? Still a lot of people. So, there, we'll think about that. All Jews worldwide, Israelites return to Israel. This is what starts to happen. See, this study today is basically focuses on the populations of what's happening during the millennium to get it off the ground, so to speak. And all the Jews worldwide, Israelites, return to Jerusalem. They return to Israel, wherever they're living. God's just compelling them to go back. All right. In that day, there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. Ensign is a flag or a identification. The ensign for America would be the Stars and Stripes. And then with it, you have, everybody has an ensign or a flag for their state or for their branch of the military service they were in. Those are what that's what that is. And it's interesting because we're going to see eventually, I don't know if we can get to it today, but ensigns were displayed by the 12 tribes of Israel too. By the 12 tribes of Israel. All right. And that day shall there be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people, so to it shall the Gentiles seek. The Gentiles know the Jews have the answer. And we're going to go, the people left alive are looking for an answer. And they're going to go to the Jews to get it. All right. To the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. Of course, the rest is another word for the millennium. The rest, regeneration, and the refreshing are the words, Bible words for the millennium. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, Cush, from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. That's the geography still above water, so to speak, on the earth, still surviving. There's Jews all over the earth. And he will recover those people. He says the second time. That's an interesting phrase, because the first time God brought back Jews to a group of dispersed Jews to Israel was when?
1948.
That's the second time, brother. But you're on the right track. Remember Ezra, Nehemiah, the Babylonian captivity? Israel and Judah were conquered. And God took his people and put them in captivity into Babylon, and then they were brought back out of Babylon and they returned. That's the first return. Isaiah prophesied that even before it happened. He was prophesying the second return. The second return does begin in 1948. It culminates in the being first part of the millennium. Because even though the Jews went back in 1948, now this is important, they all didn't go back. A little more than half of them are back in Israel right now. The rest of them, there's like 5-6 million in America. There's only like 50, I forget exactly what the number, less than 20 million Jews on earth. But the ones that didn't go back will go back at the first part of the millennium. All of Jews, all of Israelites get saved during the tribulation period. The purpose of the tribulation period is to convert the Jew. So they get converted, but they're still running for their lives all over the place. Lots of things are going on in the tribulation, but a lot of them will survive. The Bible tells us 2/3 of the Jews die in the tribulation period. 2/3 of them will be killed. So, the death ratio is catastrophic for everybody before we get to the millennium. All right. Israel and Judah unite. For you Bible historians here and out in the netherworld, some people make a big deal about this, and they should. Israel divided. There's Saul, David, and Solomon were the first 3 kings of Israel, and all of Israel was united. But like 125 years after that, 125 years after the first king, Saul rules for 40 years, David rules for 40 years, Solomon rules for 40 years, and then everything hits the fan. And there's a civil war, and Israel divides. We've got Israel, the 10 tribes, and Judah, the 2 tribes. Judah's where Jerusalem is. Well, the most important thing for this study is that they were never back together again. They have always been a divided nation. Israel is 2 nations. In fact, after that great divide, when God talks about Israel, he's only talking about the 10 tribes, unless the context of the scriptures deems it to be interpreted otherwise. But usually it's just talking about the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom is Judah, the kingdom of Judah. And that the capital of that city nation is Jerusalem. Okay, so they had it. Judah is what maintained the most semblance of some kind of relationship with God, even though there's only a few kings, 5 or 6. The vast majority of kings did not serve the Lord. In Israel, the 10 tribes, no king served the Lord. None of them. So they've been a mess. Ever since Solomon, Israel, all of them have been a mess, pretty much. Here and there was a good king, but for the most part, no. Okay, but Ezekiel 37:22 through 23. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. They shall be no more 2 nations, neither shall they be divided into 2 kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols or their detestable things, nor with their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their God. He restores Israel. He restores all the Jews, and he's got them back in their land. Right? That happens at the beginning of the millennium. Okay. Kingdom's government. Well, when you got New World Order, this is a godly New World Order, but it's being set up right at the beginning of the millennium. That's part of the process. That's what any country has to do. That's what Americans had to do, set up a government. Well, the kingdom government, Jesus Christ is King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Right under him is King David. David is up, he's resurrected, he's alive, and he will rule beneath Jesus Christ. The kingdom's government, 12 apostles, the Lamb, they're up, they'll be judging the 12 tribes of Israel, but Jesus said, you'll sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Forever, that's their job. That's what they're going to do. And then there's the Jewish citizens who have authority, and they're like in evangelism, full-blown, evangelizing the world, trying to get them to become, people still have to make a choice about this. The only people who are entirely saved are the Jews. Gentiles have to make a choice. Because there'll be people dying in the millennium, you see. It says that if somebody dies and they're 100 years old, people will say, oh, a child died. Because the lifespan goes back up to like it was in the Old Testament times, even before Noah, 900 years or so. So that's going on. None of this has anything to do with Christians. People say, well, where are Christians going to live? They're going to live in they're the bride of Christ, right? Where do most brides live? With their husbands. Well, who's their husband? Jesus. There's palaces and things. In the Word, there's a lot more land, I believe, than there is right now. Because as the earth regenerates, most of this earth's underwater. You know that, right? 3/4 of it's underwater. During the millennium, he could just drain 2 or 3 oceans and he could double the land mass. But there's less people to start with anyway. But the Christian church, we do have our immortal bodies, and you're the queen, for lack of a better word, but you're the Lamb's wife. You're going to be living close by your husband. It doesn't talk a lot about it, but we can speculate intelligently. That's where you'll be. Okay. Jesus Christ is King of Kings. I'm going to read this to you just to prove some of the things I just said. Therefore will I save my flock, and they shall no more be a prey. I will judge between cattle and cattle. I will set up one shepherd over them. He shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be their God. And my servant David, a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken it. And David, here's definitely a proof text that David's here. Some people try to make David Jesus Christ. That's poor form Bible interpretation. And David, my servant, shall be king over them. It's plain enough. And they shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob, my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt. They shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. All right? David's king. He's right below the Lord Jesus Christ. And it says, and I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be a prince among them. That's from Ezekiel 34. That's the other one. Okay, the 12 apostles sit on 12 thrones in this government. Jesus said unto them, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, you also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, here we go. That ye may eat and drink at my table in the kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And I'm going to close with this, because we're out of time. In Zechariah 8:22 through 23, this is about the Jewish citizenry now. Yea, many people and strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem and pray before the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, in these days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all the languages of the nations, these are nations that have survived, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. Imagine a world where you go outside and your people are grabbing you, flagging you down as you're on your way home from church, going, tell us about Jesus, tell us about Jesus. Wouldn't that be something? Well, that's the way the world citizens are going to be responding to Israel in the millennium, at the beginning of the millennium. At the end of the millennium, sadly, it's a different story, and we're not there yet. But that's how it begins, and those are your populations.